Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou, back after a day off, a much needed day off. And if you can't take them during the international break, then when the hell are you going to take them? Is my mindset at the moment. I just think, I woke up yesterday on Saturday morning and I looked through the news and was sort of having a think about what we could potentially talk about. I did consider talking about Gabriel Martinelli, but I feel like we've talked Gabriel Martinelli to death over the course of the last month or so. So I decided to leave that. And then just looking at the news cycle, if I'm being completely honest, guys, there wasn't anything really that significant or worth trying to build a podcast around. So I decided to have a day off. I needed it. It was a nice day off, chilled, relaxed, spent some time with the little ones, which is always nice. But we are back. We are back in business now, and we're going to talk about a report that came out yesterday that has created quite a bit of frustration, has created quite a bit of noise, understandably so, and that is to do with William Saliba. Now, according to L'Equipe, very well-known and well-established and very respected French outlet, William Saliba is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. Now, really, when you think about it, this shouldn't come as a shock. Okay, we saw him have to leave the field against Liverpool at Anfield after 3 or 4 minutes. Now, it kind of emerged after the game that it looked like William Saliba had picked up some kind of problem in the warm-up, decided to give it a go, and very, very early on in the game became uncomfortable and realized that he couldn't continue. And so that was communicated to the bench. On came Christian Mosquera. And you know what? Christian Mosquera did a really, really good job. But that doesn't mean that being without Saliba isn't a blow. William Saliba is one of Arsenal's most important players. He's established himself at right centre-back alongside the brilliant Gabriel. And the pair of them, they're what gives us that really solid defensive platform. They are the real kind of epicenter of Arsenal's defensive strength. And so when one of them is missing, Arsenal are weaker. There's no question about that. There's no doubt about that. To be without Saliba is probably less of a concern now than it would have been 2 seasons ago. And that's a testament to the way that we've kind of bolstered the squad and improved the group around Gabriel and Saliba, because as we saw, Christian Mosquera came in and I thought looked really, really comfortable at Anfield. And if you can look comfortable at Anfield as a centre-back, it doesn't really get harder than that, does it? That's one of the most difficult places to go. So I've got faith in Mosquera. And obviously, if Ben White returns after the international break, he's an option at centre-back. Timber's an option at centre-back, especially on that right side. If you wanted to, to move one of them out of fullback and put the other one in centre-back, nobody's going to question that or complain about that, because actually, again, it speaks to the strength and depth that we have in that area. But I get the frustration and I get the annoyance, and we'll come on to why people are feeling that way in just a second. But on the 3 to 4 week thing, like, that feels like an okay scenario. The way he pulled up so early in the game, you knew it was serious. You knew it was bad when he wasn't even willing to give it 10, 15 minutes to see how it went. You knew that there was a problem. You knew there was an issue, and it was the right thing to get him off. But I guess the frustration and the questions that are being asked center around whether or not William Saliba should have started. Now, if William Saliba picked up a problem in the warm-up, then you could make the case, and you could certainly argue, that he shouldn't have been allowed to start the game, that the decision around taking a risk on him or not should have been taken out of his hands. There's a couple of issues here, though. It's said to be an ankle injury. And if it's an ankle injury, sometimes you don't feel the full extent of it until you take off your boot. So there is a scenario in which they had a quick look. It looked okay. Saliba was saying, look, let me give it a go. And they decided to let William Saliba lead on this and to let William Saliba take the decision. Now, obviously, William Saliba is not a medical expert. And I do think as medical experts, you've got to be able to push back against the players, because the players will always want to play. 9 times out of 10, the player's going to want to play. If he feels a little something, he's still going to want to play. He doesn't want to miss a game at Anfield. He's going to tell you, I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. Let me play the game. And this is where I've got a bit of sympathy for Mikel Arteta, because he's got a lot of criticism and a lot of stick for this, particularly since L'Equipe's report emerged yesterday, in which, as I say, it's claimed that Saliba will miss the next 3 to 4 weeks, because everybody's sort of saying, well, You're the manager. You saw him pick up a problem in the warm-up. Why the hell didn't you insist that he doesn't play? Why the hell didn't you make that change before the game started? Why did you let him start the game, potentially do further damage in a more intense situation, and then bring Christian Mosquera into the side? Why didn't you just replace Saliba ahead of kickoff? And look, I think to a point and to a degree, I kind of agree with that. I feel like as a football club, as management, as medical staff, you've got to look at something and you've got to take the decision because you're the medical expert. The player isn't. But at the same time, if the player is telling you he's okay, it's very, very difficult, isn't it, to gauge the severity of a problem in the space of 10 minutes, the 10-minute period between them going in from their warm-up to them coming out to start the game itself. It's a very short window. You don't have all your equipment. You're not able to scan people and all the rest of it very, very quickly just before a game kicks off. So it's a difficult decision to make. I agree, and I acknowledge that. And I'm not as angry about it as a lot of others because I think that, again, you're going to trust the player to a point and to a degree. And actually, if you look at the incident or you have a look at some of the videos going around about when William Saliba supposedly sustained this issue, it does feel like a complete freak accident. This is not like that run of hamstring injuries that we had last season where you could make a correlation between the players that, in our view and in our opinion, had been really overworked, running to the ground, not rotated anywhere near enough, and then pop goes the hamstring. You could make that correlation between the way they were being managed and potentially overworked versus the then severity of those injury problems. I don't think you can do that with stuff like this. I don't think you can do that when it comes to things like rolling an ankle. It can happen at any point. I remember sort of when I was playing football and I was much, much younger, obviously, and fit as a fiddle, often I would roll my ankle. And I remember one time I rolled it and I thought it was nothing. And I continued for about 10, 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden it just like ballooned. And I realized that I'd done some damage and the adrenaline sort of stopped. And all of a sudden I had to go off the pitch and I was out for ages. Now I'm massively unfit and definitely overweight. I don't roll my ankle because I don't put myself through that sort of intense exercise. But if I was to play football, whether fit or not, you can roll your ankle at any given point. So this idea that whatever William Saliba suffered is preventable, I think it's one based on anger and frustration more than actual knowing and actual fact. And that's what annoys me a little bit about the reaction to it. It's cool to say that Arsenal shouldn't have played him. It's absolutely fine to say that the decision should have been taken out of Saliba's hands. But whether Saliba started that game or not, he might have been out for 3 or 4 weeks anyway, having sustained this problem. So the truth is we don't know. And that's why I'm reluctant to go really big one way or the other. People will tell you that I'm sitting on the fence and I'm just trying to cover for the club and cover for Mikel Arteta. Absolutely not. In an ideal world, they see him get injured in the warm-up and they say, no, you're not playing. You can't. We can't risk you. We need you. You're a really, really important part of the team. We'd rather miss you for 1 week, 2 weeks, than miss you for potentially 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so that is all fair and that is all valid. But we don't know, exactly what the injury is because the report from L'Equipe is very vague and Arsenal certainly haven't come out with any information on that. We don't know whether William Saliba insisted on playing. And if he's telling you he's okay, like you can be the best doctor in the world, but you wouldn't know how he's feeling. Only he knows that. If he's telling you he's all right, then, you're in between the rock and a hard place because probably your gut says, get him out of there, get him out of the team. But then you've got this guy who is a top level athlete, pretty intimidating guy as well, telling you, no, I'm playing, I'm fine. So it's a much more complex situation and there's much more to it than I think this just basic analysis that I'm seeing of, well, if he suffered a problem in the warm-up, he should never have been allowed to play, blah, 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 blah. If things worked very sort of basically and everything was cut and dry and clear, then yes, you are right in saying that he shouldn't have played. But I'm actually more annoyed at William Saliba for, probably recognizing this was an issue, but still wanting to push through with it than I am with the management for allowing him to play based on his word that he was good to do so. Do you see what I mean? It's one of those things where you can be annoyed about it and you can be frustrated about it. And listen, we're all annoyed and frustrated about it because at the start of this season, it's starting to feel a bit like last season with the just volume of injuries that we're picking up. You know, we went to Anfield with no Saka. We went to Anfield with Odegaard only being able to play 20 to 30 minutes. We went there with no Ben White. We went there with no Christian Norgard. We went there with no Kai Havertz. So I understand the frustration, and that frustration stems from having been through this before with injuries. But yeah, as I say, like, I don't really know where to allocate the blame on this. I'm not saying that Arteta's blameless. I'm not saying the medical staff are blameless. I'm not saying William Saliba is blameless. I think it's a whole cocktail of sort of participants and people involved in the decision-making process. And ultimately, the fact that he started the game and had to come off so early means that whoever it was, and again, we don't know that, which is why I'm reluctant to pin it on any one individual, whoever it was that decided that it was okay for William Saliba to proceed, and that maybe has increased the time he's going to be out. I don't know. Again, we're speculating here. The decision was a wrong one. But it's easy to say that with hindsight, is my point. What games is William Saliba going to miss then? Well, it looks like he's going to miss Forest at home. Fine. Athletic Club away. I think we can get by there as well. Man City at home. That's one that you could have done with him in. Port Vale away in the Cup. And then Newcastle away potentially as well. So that's, 5 games, 2 of which I would have really, really wanted William Saliba in the team. Like, if we'd have gone to Athletic Club and Mikel went, you know what, I'm going to give Mosquera an opportunity, I would have been fine with that. If we went to Port Vale, the same, Forest at home even, I can accept that. Man City at home feels like a bigger game because we've lost to Liverpool. And then Newcastle away, well, we know that we don't traditionally have a good time there. So, yeah, that's another one that's going to be very, very physical. And again, Mosquera can be physical, but he's not William Saliba yet. So, you can understand why there's a frustration and why there's a concern. But as we keep saying, the squad is better equipped now to deal with these types of issues. And we are better geared in order to handle these types of scenarios. So that's what we got to hope for, that strength in depth is going to really kind of show its value early on in the season. And hopefully, look, we'll end the season stronger in terms of injuries, and we'll have less disruption when we get to the real crunch point. We got to stay in there for now. That's always the kind of remit, I think, at the beginning of a season. You want to win a title, yeah, fine. You want to start strongly, but you don't win titles in August and September. You win titles in April and May, right? March, April, and May. Around that Christmas period as well can be very decisive too. So I always say, like, I don't really panic at the start of a campaign. I always kind of look at it, and I'm looking at performances, and I want to find a little bit of confidence in those performances. And granted, we haven't really had that in the 2 away games that we've played in terms of what we can offer offensively. But I'm not that stressed right now. I feel like we need to be in the mix. We need to stay within the group at the top. And I think we will do that. And that will put us in a position where hopefully, if things go our way in the back end of the season, in the business end of the season, we'll get over the line and we'll achieve what we want to. But this is frustrating. It is annoying because it's another key player. It's another injury. So what you're sort of saying now is that, we're going to go into the upcoming games with no Saliba, who would have definitely started, no Saka, who would have definitely started, no Kai Havertz, no Ben White, who might have started unless he's back now. Not entirely sure what his injury situation looks like. But basically, we're going into big games already without key players. We're already having to, delve into the squad. We're already having to adapt and adjust and form new partnerships and bonds and all the rest of it because we can't keep players fit. And it is really, really frustrating. But again, it's a bit like it is very hard because, as I keep saying, you don't know where specifically to put the blame. And there are scenarios with injuries where you don't put the blame on anyone. You've done everything right as a football club. You've done everything right as a player from a conditioning perspective. And then all of a sudden, something goes wrong. A freak accident can happen. I can't remember who it was, but there was a story many years ago where a very high profile footballer, and forgive me because I can't remember for the life of me who it was, dropped an aftershave bottle on their foot or something and was out. Like, you can't legislate for that, right? So I think this thing, and it's it's the way we are as people nowadays, right? As a society, it's like something's gone wrong. Who can we blame? Who can we scapegoat? Who can we go after? And I just think in these situations where we don't have all the facts and we don't know what's gone on behind the scenes, we don't know whose decision it was that William Saliba pushed through that problem that he suffered in the warm-up. It's very, very difficult to allocate blame. So rather than allocate it to the wrong person, I prefer to kind of accept that and acknowledge that. I'll have my opinions and my thoughts and my suspicions. And my suspicion is that William Saliba said, I'm fine. In which case, what do you do? What do you do? I think as a manager, you don't want to be told 10 minutes before a big game that one of your centre backs is out. So maybe that kind of want that you have and that hope that you have, it puts you in a position where your judgment is a little bit clouded. I would argue that you can't afford for it to be. And so I do think there is something to be said for Arsenal and Mikel Arteta's decision to let him go through that if they were aware of that injury, which I'm sure they were. But yeah, is it 100% on them or is it 50% on them? Is it 20%? The truth is we don't know, guys. We don't know. I had a couple of questions come through to me yesterday on social media about England's performance against Andorra. So I just want to touch on that very, very briefly. Now, I've got to be honest, I was kind of half-arsing watching the game, to be honest with you. Games like England versus Andorra, with all due respect, they don't do it for me. Okay, I don't have that same allegiance to England like a lot of our listeners do because I'm not from an English background. Obviously, I want them to make the tournaments. I like them to stay in the tournaments because I think that it makes better viewing and there's a greater buzz and excitement around the tournaments in this country as a result of that. But my point is that when they lose, I don't get down about it. I don't really care. It doesn't really stick with me. It is nice to see so many Arsenal players representing them. And it is really nice to see Arsenal at the forefront because there was a time where a lot of England and Arsenal fans would have been a little bit disappointed by the fact that we didn't have any representation really in that England side. That's probably why growing up, I never had that affection for England because I didn't want to watch Scholes, Beckham, Shearer and all those guys doing well, quite frankly. But yeah, look, we are where we are now. I think I've seen a lot of fallout from the England performance. You beat a team like Andorra, you can't really win, can you? If you go and put 6 past them, everybody will say, well, it's Andorra and not give you any credit for it. If you put 2, 3 past them and then, shift down into second, even first gear and cruise through the remainder of the game, people will say, well, you should have put 6 past them. You should have really put these lot to the sword. I don't read into these qualifier performances too much. These players are still finding their way back to their peak conditions. They're still finding their feet at their clubs. I think it's way too early in the season to have an international break. I've said it over and over again. Over the years, it's been my opinion for a long, long time. I just think like the discourse around England is so boring, man. It's so boring. Like, how about people just accept that international football isn't the same? When you group a bunch of players together that are not playing with each other week in, week out, and are not on the training ground together week in, week out, you're going to struggle for cohesion. You're going to struggle for connections. That is fact. And as a result of that, you're not going to get the performances that you would get from a top club team that are working together day in, day out, that know each other inside out. It's just not the same. And you almost have to look at international football as a totally different game, in my opinion, anyway. And it's just boring. Like every time England play, it's like, oh my God, they're so rubbish, blah, 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 blah. They've been far in so many of the recent tournaments, right? Gareth Southgate deserves a lot of praise for that. I know he has shortcomings as a coach. I know there's a lot of people that feel like England might have won one of those tournaments had somebody else been at the helm. But it's just all so boring, man. Like, we're sitting here saying that you can't really read into games against the likes of Andorra in terms of it telling you whether England are ready or not to win the biggest trophies. Equally, if they don't play that well, it shouldn't tell you the full story either. And therefore, you shouldn't read into it too much. That's how I see it anyway. But as I say, nice to see that Arsenal connection involved. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Just a brief episode today. Not much to talk about. And so I'm not going to force it. We'll be back on Monday with a full-length episode. And I'm sure there'll be lots more to unpack. We can have a few debates and discussions that I've got in my mind as well. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are brand new as well. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, that really, really does help. Those reviews are so important. So please get involved. Also, leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Who's to blame, if anybody, for the situation we find ourselves in now with William Saliba? Let me know what you think. As I say, I find it really difficult to allocate the blame to any one individual, particularly given that we don't know the details and we don't know what conversations took place. I'm not saying don't be angry about it. I'm not saying don't be frustrated about it. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm just saying have a pause and think about who is to blame. If you're going to blame someone, like, think about it properly. And then when you come to whatever conclusion you're going to come to, because this is a thought process that I went through, then ask yourself, well, how do I know that? So if you think it was Arteta's fault, then ask yourself whether Arteta knew 100% the severity of the problem or the extent of the problem. Ask yourself if William Saliba told Mikel that it was fine to continue. Ask yourself if, as a manager in that situation, you'd have been able to say to William Saliba, you're not playing, and he would have accepted it. Like, there's so many facets to this, is all I'm saying. If you want to blame him, blame him. If you want to blame Saliba, blame Saliba. If you want to blame the doctor, blame the doctor. It's up to you. I'm just saying, have a think about it, because it's a far more complex situation, I think, than people care to admit. And there was someone on X who said, he wasn't sending me a message, but he tweeted me in the thing, and he goes, "Oh, you know, Harry hasn't challenged Arteta on it, blah blah blah. Just goes to the press conferences and doesn't challenge him on anything." First of all, I wasn't at the Liverpool game, so I couldn't challenge him post Liverpool, and I haven't been to one since, so it's a little bit difficult. Anyway, right, gonna love you and leave you. Thank you all so much for joining me. Until the next one, take care of yourselves and have a wonderful Sunday. Up the Arsenal. Goodbye.